I stood in the corner of my parents' backyard, watching my mother Patricia hand out gift bags to every child at her 50th anniversary party. My 8-year-old daughter Emma stepped forward hopefully, but Mom pushed her aside. "Wait your turn," she said coldly, handing elaborate bags to the neighbors' kids first. Emma waited patiently, then asked softly, "Can I have one, Grandma?" My sister Jessica shoved an empty trash bag into Emma's hands and sneered, "Pick up the trash." I watched every child laugh and play with expensive toys while my daughter bent down collecting wrappers. I approached my mother and whispered, "She's your blood." Mom snapped back, "If you don't like it, don't come next year. And before you leave, clean the whole area." I didn't make a scene. I took Emma's hand and left quietly. The next morning, my parents opened their front door and screamed so loud the entire neighborhood heard. The drive home from that party felt like the longest 20 minutes of my life. Emma sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. She didn't sob or wail. She just cried quietly, the way kids do when they've learned that making noise doesn't help. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. The streetlights blurred past us as I drove through our suburban neighborhood, past the neat lawns and perfect houses that hid so much ugliness. Emma finally spoke, her voice small and broken. "Dad, why doesn't Grandma love me?" I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. What do you say to that? How do you explain cruelty to a child, especially when it comes from family? I swallowed hard, trying to find words that wouldn't add to her pain. "She does love you, honey," I started, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew they were a lie. Emma knew it too. She turned to look at me with those big brown eyes, so much like her mother's, and I saw she didn't believe me. She was 8 years old, and already learning that adults lie to protect themselves more than to protect children. "Mom would have protected me," Emma said quietly, and those words hit me like a physical blow. She was right. Laura would have torn into my family the first time they showed Emma an ounce of disrespect. But Laura had been gone for 18 months now, taken from us by a drunk driver on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. 18 months of learning to cook meals that didn't taste like cardboard, of braiding hair that never looked quite right, of being both father and mother to a little girl who'd lost the most important person in her world. My wife and I had been married for 12 wonderful years before that day. Laura came from a working-class family in the next county over. Her father was a mechanic, her mother a nurse. Good, honest people who worked hard and loved harder. My parents never approved of Laura. Dad Robert barely showed up to our wedding, arriving late and leaving early. Mom Patricia refused to stand in any wedding photos that included Laura's parents, claiming she had a headache. Jessica, my older sister, spent the entire reception making snide comments about the simple flower arrangements and the modest venue. "Your brother could have done so much better," I overheard Jessica tell someone at the reception. "She settled for less than she deserved," was the kindest thing I ever heard Mom say about Laura. But Laura and I were happy. We built a life together in a small 3-bedroom house with a backyard just big enough for a swing set. We had Emma, who became the center of our universe. And we had love, real love, the kind that grows deeper with every shared breakfast and every argument over whose turn it was to take out the trash. 3 years ago, my grandmother Dorothy passed away. She was 92 and sharp as a tack until the very end. Grandma Dorothy had always loved Laura. She was the only one in my family who defended my marriage, who welcomed Laura with genuine warmth. I remember her pulling me aside at Emma's christening and saying, "You married a good woman, Mason. Don't let anyone tell you different." When Grandma Dorothy's will was read, there was an earthquake in my family. She left her entire estate to me, $2 million, including her beautiful Victorian house on Maple Street. The will was specific and, in retrospect, telling. To my grandson Mason, who married for love and not for status, and who will use this gift to build a good life for his family. My parents were furious. They'd been counting on that inheritance, had probably spent it a dozen times over in their minds. Jessica and her husband Brian had already been planning what they'd do with their share, but Grandma Dorothy had seen something in my parents that took me years to recognize. She knew what kind of people they really were. They tried to contest the will, spent thousands on lawyers, dragged the process out for 8 months. But Grandma Dorothy had been meticulous. Her will was ironclad, witnessed properly, and her mental competence at the time of signing was thoroughly documented. The judge threw out their challenge in less than 15 minutes. I used that money wisely, the way Grandma Dorothy would have wanted. Paid off our mortgage completely. Set up a college fund for Emma that would see her through any school she wanted to attend. Put the rest in careful investments. We weren't flashy about it. We still lived in the same house, still drove the same cars. But we had security, and that was worth more than any mansion. My family never forgave me. Not for inheriting the money, but for actually getting it. If the will had been overturned, they'd have split it 3 ways. Instead, I got everything, and they got nothing but legal bills and bruised egos. Since Laura died, the resentment had transformed into something uglier: cruelty. Emma looked exactly like her mother. Same wavy brown hair, same dimples, same quick smile. But where Laura's resemblance had brought mild disapproval from my family, Emma's brought active hostility. It was as if they punished my daughter for daring to look like the woman they'd never thought was good enough. I'd been documenting the incidents for months. Photos from family gatherings where Emma was the only child left out of group pictures. Screenshots of text messages from Jessica making nasty comments about Laura's memory. Video from birthday parties where Emma received dollar store gifts while other kids got expensive toys. I'd kept it all, organized it carefully, not quite sure what I planned to do with it, but knowing I needed evidence of what was happening. Jessica's phone call that night told me everything I needed to know about why they'd been so superficially pleasant at the start of the party. I'd just gotten Emma to bed when my phone rang at 11:15. Jessica's name lit up the screen. Mason. She sobbed into the phone before I even said hello. Mason, I need your help. Please, you have to help me. What's wrong? I asked, though I kept my tone carefully neutral. It's Brian. He got arrested. DUI. They won't let him out until someone posts bail. I need $5,000. I need it tonight. The bail bondsman says if we don't pay by morning, he'll have to stay in jail until his hearing, and that could be weeks, and he'll lose his job, and we can't afford that, Mason. Please, I'm begging you. I stood in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, and suddenly everything clicked into place. The party. The initial friendliness when we'd arrived. Jessica pulling me aside twice to chat. Mom asking about my work. They'd been setting me up all evening, planning to ask for money before we left. But I'd left early with Emma, and now Jessica was desperate. Ask Mom and Dad, I said quietly. They're the ones who matter. They're the ones everyone respects. Mason, please don't do this. Don't be petty. Brian made a mistake, but he's family. Family, I repeated. Like Emma's family? Like how you treated her today? There was a long pause. Then Jessica's voice changed, went cold and hard. You're really going to hold that against us? She was being dramatic. We were going to give her a bag. She just had to wait. She's 8 years old, and you humiliated her in front of 30 people. You made her pick up trash while other kids played. Oh, grow up, Mason. You're so sensitive. Everything's always such a big deal with you. I hung up. My hands were shaking. I blocked her number, then blocked my parents' numbers too. I walked to my home office and opened my laptop. I'd been a contracts manager for a corporate real estate firm for 12 years. I knew how to document everything, how to build a case, how to present evidence that would stand up to scrutiny. I started typing a formal letter, not to my family, but to my lawyer friend Kevin. It was time to stop documenting and start acting. The next morning, I dropped Emma off at school. She moved slowly, reluctantly, her backpack weighing her down like it was filled with rocks instead of books. Some of those kids from the party will be there, she said quietly, as we pulled into the school parking lot. I know, honey. I parked and turned to face her. Emma, I need you to know something. What happened yesterday will never happen again. I promise you. How can you promise that? Because I'm going to make sure of it. She looked at me with those wise, sad eyes. Okay, Dad. I watched her walk into the building, shoulders hunched, and something in my chest physically hurt. Then I sat in that parking lot and made 3 phone calls that would change everything. The first call was to Kevin Patterson, my friend from college who'd become a family law attorney. Kevin and I had played on the same intramural basketball team, had been in each other's weddings, had watched our kids grow up together at neighborhood barbecues. Kev, I need your help. Legal help. What's going on, Mason? I need to document a pattern of emotional abuse against Emma. I need cease and desist letters, and I need to know my options for supervised visitation or restraining orders. There was a pause. This is about your parents? And my sister. Kevin, I've got 18 months of documentation. Photos, videos, text messages. What happened yesterday was just the worst incident in a long pattern. Come to my office. Bring everything. We'll talk. The second call was to my Uncle Frank, my father's younger brother. Frank and Dad hadn't spoken in 15 years, ever since some family blowout that nobody ever fully explained to me. Frank lived 2 towns over, ran a small accounting practice, and sent Emma birthday cards every year with $20 bills inside. Uncle Frank, it's Mason. I need to talk to you about Dad and Grandma Dorothy. Another pause. Longer this time. I wondered if you'd ever call about that. You know something. I know a lot of things, Mason. Things I've kept quiet about for too long. Can you come by today? I'll be there this afternoon. The third call was to Mrs. Henderson, my parents' next-door neighbor. She'd lived on Cherry Street for 40 years, had known my family since I was in diapers. Mrs. Henderson, this is Mason. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Have you noticed how my parents treat Emma? Oh, honey. Her voice went soft with sympathy. I've noticed. I've been wanting to say something for months, but it's not my place to get involved in family matters. Would you be willing to give a statement? As a witness? To who? To my lawyer. I'm taking legal action to protect my daughter. Then yes, she said immediately. Yes, I'll tell anyone who needs to know. That sweet child doesn't deserve what they do to her. I met Kevin at his office downtown at 9:30. His secretary brought us coffee, and I spread 18 months of documentation across his conference table. Photos from Thanksgiving where Emma had been seated at the kids' table in the kitchen, while other grandchildren sat in the dining room. Screenshots of text messages from Jessica, telling mutual friends that Emma was becoming difficult and troubled since Laura's death, none of which was true. A video from Easter where Mom had hidden eggs for all the children except Emma, claiming she'd forgotten to include her. The video from yesterday's party was the worst. I'd started recording on my phone when I saw Mom handing out the gift bags, some instinct telling me to capture what was happening. The audio was crystal clear. Mom's voice saying, "Wait your turn to Emma." Jessica's sneer as she handed Emma the trash bag. My own voice, quiet and controlled, saying, "She's your blood." Mom's sharp response about not coming next year, and demanding I clean up before leaving. Kevin watched it twice, his jaw getting tighter each time. Mason, this is grounds for emotional abuse. It's harassment. It's systematic exclusion and humiliation of a minor child. He looked up at me. You want to file for supervised visitation only? I want them to have no unsupervised contact with Emma whatsoever. I want formal documentation that if they violate boundaries, there will be legal consequences. I can draft cease and desist letters for all 3 of them. We can file for a protection order that restricts their contact with Emma. But Mason, you need to know this is going to escalate things. They already escalated it. I'm just responding. Kevin nodded slowly. There's something else you should know. If we're filing this kind of paperwork, it becomes part of the court record. If there are any other legal issues involving your parents, this documentation could be relevant. What kind of other legal issues? I don't know. I'm just saying, once we open this door, we can't control where it leads. Open it. Uncle Frank lived in a tidy ranch house with a garden full of roses. He answered the door, holding a glass of iced tea, and looking like he'd aged 10 years since I'd last seen him. Come in, Mason. We have a lot to talk about. We sat in his living room, surrounded by family photos that didn't include my father. Frank brought out a banker's box from his home office, set it on the coffee table between us. 15 years ago, I discovered something about your father. Something that made me cut ties with him completely. Your mother knew about it too. They both did. What was it? Frank opened the box. Inside were financial documents, bank statements, legal papers yellowed with age. 20 years ago, your father convinced Grandma Dorothy to invest in his commercial real estate development company. He told her it was a sure thing, that she could triple her money in 5 years. She gave him $300,000, everything she'd saved from Grandpa's life insurance and her own work. I stared at the documents. What happened to the money? Your father lost it. All of it. Bad investments, bad business decisions, and some of it he just spent. He bought a vacation condo in Florida, put it in your mother's maiden name. He bought a boat. He took trips. And when the business failed, he told Grandma Dorothy that her investment had gone down with it. Made her think it was just bad luck, market forces, nothing anyone could have done. But it wasn't. Frank shook his head. It was fraud, Mason. He misrepresented how he'd used the funds. He commingled her investment with personal expenses. I found out by accident when I was helping Grandma with her taxes one year. I saw the withdrawal, asked about it, and she told me the whole story. She didn't want anyone to know because she was ashamed, thought she'd been foolish to invest. But I did some digging, and I found out what your father had really done. Did you confront him? I tried. He denied everything. Then he told the rest of the family that I was trying to turn Grandma Dorothy against him, that I was jealous of his success. By the time I tried to show anyone the evidence, I'd been painted as the troublemaker. So I stepped back. I kept the documents, kept my distance, and I watched Grandma rebuild her wealth over the next 15 years, through careful investments and frugal living. That's why she left everything to me. Frank nodded. She knew what kind of man your father was. She knew he'd stolen from her and lied about it. That will wasn't just about you, Mason. It was her final judgment on your father. I looked at the documents spread before me. Can you prove all this? Every transaction is documented. I have bank statements showing the withdrawals from Grandma's account and deposits into your father's business account. I have records of the condo purchase and boat registration. I have copies of the fraudulent prospectus he showed her. It's all here. Why are you giving this to me now? Because I heard what happened at that party. Mrs. Henderson called me yesterday. She's worried about Emma. Frank leaned forward. Mason, your father stole from his own mother and let her think she'd made a bad investment. Do you really think he has any conscience about how he treats your daughter? I took the box. With Kevin's permission, I sent copies of everything to the State Attorney General's office that afternoon. I filed a formal complaint alleging financial fraud against an elderly person. I included Uncle Frank's contact information as a witness and offered to provide any additional documentation needed. Then Kevin drafted the cease and desist letters and protection order petitions. Clear, legal language demanding that my parents and Jessica cease all contact with Emma unless supervised by a court-appointed monitor. The letters cited specific incidents, referenced the video evidence, and made clear that any violation would result in immediate legal action. We had everything delivered by professional process server at 7 o'clock that evening. I wanted them to be home, to be settled in for the night, to have nowhere to hide or make excuses. The process server called me at 7:23. Documents delivered to all 3 parties. Your father answered the door. How did he react? He went pale, sir. Started reading right there on the doorstep. Then I heard screaming from inside the house. I thanked him and hung up. My phone immediately started buzzing. Calls from Mom, Dad, Jessica. Text messages pouring in. I blocked them all without reading them. I'd said everything I needed to say in legal documents, drafted by a professional. I had nothing else to add. But at 9:15, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I answered out of curiosity. Mason, what have you done? It was Dad, calling from someone else's phone. What have you done? I protected my daughter. That's what I've done. You filed a criminal complaint against me. Against your own father. You're trying to destroy this family. You destroyed it yourself 20 years ago when you stole from Grandma Dorothy. I just documented it. The line went dead. Through my front window, I saw Jessica's car pull up to my parents' house down the street. We lived in the same neighborhood, a fact that had seemed convenient once, but now felt claustrophobic. I watched her run inside. Lights blazed in every window. They were having their emergency family meeting, trying to figure out how to respond. I put Emma to bed with a story about a brave princess who learned she didn't need a kingdom to be worthy, just people who truly loved her. She fell asleep with her hand in mine. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in months. I'd finally stopped running from the confrontation I'd been avoiding for years. But I woke up to something that proved I'd underestimated just how far they'd go. The sun wasn't even fully up when I heard Emma scream. I bolted from bed, heart hammering, and ran to her room. She was standing at her window, pointing down at our front yard, her face white with shock. I looked out and felt my stomach drop. Spray painted across our white garage door in huge red letters was the word traitor. My car sat in the driveway with all 4 tires slashed, rubber hanging in strips. The mailbox had been torn from its post and lay crumpled on the lawn. Our garden, where Laura had planted roses the year before she died, was torn apart, flowers ripped up and scattered across the grass. "Oh no," Emma whispered. "Dad, who did this?" "I don't know, honey," I lied, though we both knew exactly who was responsible. "Go get dressed. We need to call the police." By 6:30, 2 police officers were walking around my property, taking photos and filling out a report. Neighbors had come out to stare. Mrs. Henderson stood on her porch, arms crossed, shaking her head. Down the street, my parents' house sat quiet, curtains drawn. "Any idea who might have done this?" the younger officer asked. "I could guess, but I don't have proof." The older officer, whose nameplate read Ramirez, gave me a knowing look. "This related to any family disputes, sir?" "I'm in the middle of a legal situation with some family members. Served them with papers yesterday. That'd be motive." He wrote something in his notebook. "We'll file the report, but without witnesses or video evidence, it's going to be hard to prove who did it. You have security cameras?" "I'm installing them today." "Good idea." They left. I called my insurance company, arranged for my car to be towed for new tires. I took Emma to school late, explaining the situation to her principal. She was kind, concerned, promised to keep an eye on Emma throughout the day. When I got home, I found 3 text messages from people in my neighborhood asking if everything was okay. I started to reply, then noticed I'd been tagged on Facebook. My hands went cold as I opened the app. Jessica had posted a long, detailed message on her page, and she'd tagged me, my parents, and about 20 mutual friends and neighbors. The post was carefully crafted to sound concerned and loving while painting me as unstable and vengeful. It read, "I'm reaching out to friends and family today because I'm deeply worried about my brother Mason. Since losing his wife Laura 18 months ago, he's been struggling. We've all tried to support him, but he's become increasingly paranoid and hostile toward our family. Yesterday, he served our elderly parents with legal papers making completely false accusations of financial crimes from decades ago. He's filed restraining orders to keep them from seeing their granddaughter Emma. This morning, someone vandalized his property, and instead of considering all possibilities, he's immediately blaming us. Mason, if you're reading this, please know we love you, and we're here for you. But you need help. This isn't healthy for you, or for Emma. To everyone else, please keep my brother and niece in your prayers. We're hoping he'll accept the support he needs." The post had 37 comments already. Most were sympathetic to Jessica, expressing concern about me. People I'd known for years, neighbors, old coworkers, all writing things like, "So sorry you're going through this and hope he gets the help he needs." My phone started ringing. My boss, Richard, calling at 8:45 in the morning. "Mason, I need you to come into the office. Now, what's going on? Just come in, please." I drove to the office with my destroyed tires replaced by cheap temporary ones. Richard met me in the parking lot, which was my first clue this was bad. "Mason, I've known you for 12 years. You're one of my best project managers. So I'm going to be straight with you. Someone called HR this morning. Your sister, I think. She expressed concerns about your mental state. Said you've been erratic, making false accusations against family, that you might be having a breakdown. That's not true. I'm dealing with a family situation, but I'm handling it appropriately through legal channels. I believe you. But company policy is clear. When concerns are raised about an employee's mental health, especially concerns that suggest potential workplace issues, we have to follow protocol. He looked genuinely sorry. You're being placed on administrative leave pending a medical evaluation. It's paid leave, and it's just until we can get documentation from a mental health professional that you're fit for duty. Richard, this is exactly what they want. They're trying to make me look unstable to undermine my credibility. I know, and that's why I'm going to make this as quick as possible. But I can't fight company policy. Get the evaluation done, bring me the paperwork, and you'll be back at your desk. He promised. I drove home in a daze. In less than 24 hours, my family had vandalized my property, turned my community against me, and cost me my job. All because I'd tried to protect Emma from their cruelty. My lawyer Kevin called at noon. Mason, we've got a problem. Another one? Jessica just filed an emergency motion for custody of Emma. I'm looking at the paperwork now. She's claiming you're emotionally unstable, that you're having a psychological break since Laura's death, that Emma is in danger in your care. That's insane. She's the one who's been abusing Emma. I know. But she's got affidavits from your parents saying you've made false accusations, kept Emma from family, displayed paranoid behavior. She's got the Facebook post showing community concern. She's got the incident report from this morning's vandalism, which she's spinning as you possibly doing it yourself for attention. I would never vandalize my own property. I know that, Mason. But she's building a narrative. Grief-stricken widower becomes paranoid and vengeful, starts seeing his family as enemies, makes false criminal complaints, gets put on leave from work. She's painting you as someone in crisis, who's using Emma as a weapon against your family. When's the hearing? 3 days. Friday morning. We need to be ready. I hung up and sat in my living room, surrounded by the ruins of my normal life. Everything I'd done to protect Emma was being twisted and used against me. I'd played right into their hands. The school called at 2:30. Emma had an incident. What kind of incident? Jessica showed up here trying to pick Emma up. Said there was a family emergency, and she needed to take her. We didn't allow it, but Emma became very upset. She's in the counselor's office now. You should come get her. I was there in 8 minutes. Emma sat in the counselor's office, tears streaming down her face, hiccuping between sobs. Dad, is Aunt Jessica going to take me away? No, honey. No one's taking you anywhere. But she said she's going to court to get me because you're sick and can't take care of me. I'm not sick. I'm fine. We're fine. The counselor, a kind woman named Susan, pulled me aside. Mr. Mason, I need to tell you something. Your sister was very insistent. She mentioned that there's a custody hearing on Friday. Is that true? Yes. She filed an emergency motion. But it's baseless. She's retaliating because I'm protecting Emma from family members who've been emotionally abusing her. I believe you. I've seen how close you and Emma are, how well adjusted she is. But I need to document this incident, and it's going to be part of Emma's school record. Just so you know. I understand. That night, I tried to explain court proceedings to an 8-year-old girl who shouldn't have to understand any of this. I told her that sometimes adults have disagreements that need a judge to sort out, but that no matter what, she was safe with me. Is it because I'm bad? She asked, and my heart shattered. No, baby. Never. You are perfect and good, and none of this is your fault. This is about grown-ups making bad choices, not about you. She cried herself to sleep. I sat in the living room with my laptop, reading over the custody motion, feeling walls close in from every direction. My phone rang at 10 p.m. Kevin, Mason, your boss just called your sister's lawyer. He told them about putting you on administrative leave. They're amending their motion to include it. They're going to argue that you lost your job due to instability. I didn't lose my job. I'm on leave. I know. But the distinction doesn't matter for their narrative. They're building a picture of someone in crisis. Vandalism at your house. Administrative leave from work. Legal complaints against family members that haven't resulted in charges yet. On paper, it looks bad. What do? We go to court on Friday, and we tell the truth. We show them the evidence of abuse. We demonstrate that you're a fit parent who's protecting his child from toxic family members. And if that's not enough, Then we appeal. But Mason, I need you to prepare yourself. This judge might order a temporary custody change while things get sorted out. Just temporarily, while evaluations are done. I can't let Emma go to Jessica. She hates her, Kevin. She'll destroy her. I know. We'll fight it with everything we have. After I hung up, I sat in the dark and realized the truth. My family had turned my protective actions into evidence of instability. They'd manipulated the system, twisted the narrative, and positioned themselves as concerned relatives trying to help, while I looked like a paranoid father having a breakdown. I'd tried to fight back, and somehow I was losing. Friday morning arrived too fast. I dressed in my best suit, the charcoal one I'd worn to Laura's funeral. Emma wore her school uniform because I'd take her straight to class after the hearing. She held my hand as we walked into the family courthouse, her palm sweaty against mine. The hearing room was smaller than I'd expected, wood-paneled and formal. My parents sat on one side with Jessica and her lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman in an expensive suit. They all wore expressions of concern, the kind you'd wear to a hospital visit, performing worry for the judge. Kevin and I sat on the other side. He'd brought 3 accordion files of evidence, all our documentation of the years of emotional abuse Emma had endured. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s with gray hair pulled back severely. Her nameplate read Judge Morrison. Everyone stood. Then Saturday. The proceedings began. Jessica's lawyer went first, painting a picture of a grieving brother who'd lost his way. She presented their narrative smoothly, professionally. Mason has been struggling since his wife's death 18 months ago. His family tried to support him, but he's become increasingly paranoid and hostile. He's filed baseless criminal complaints against his elderly parents. He's isolated his daughter from her grandparents. He was placed on administrative leave from his job due to concerning behavior. Someone vandalized his property. And instead of considering all possibilities, he immediately blamed his family without evidence. Jessica took the stand. She dressed in a conservative blue dress, minimal makeup, hair pulled back. She looked like every concerned aunt in America. "I love my brother," she began, her voice catching. "We all do. But since Laura died, he's changed. He sees threats everywhere. Last week, he served our parents with legal papers claiming financial crimes from 30 years ago. Completely false accusations. He's filed restraining orders, keeping them from their granddaughter. Emma is suffering because of his paranoia. She needs stability, love, a home where she's not caught in the middle of her father's vendetta against his family." "Your sister's affidavit mentions an anniversary party," Jessica's lawyer prompted. "Yes. Our parents celebrated their 50th anniversary 2 weeks ago. It was a lovely party, lots of children, very festive. Emma was playing with the other kids, having a wonderful time. But Mason became agitated, accused our mother of mistreating Emma, and stormed out. The whole thing was in his head, but he was so convinced of it that he took Emma and left. I wanted to stand up and scream that she was lying, but Kevin's hand on my arm kept me seated. My mother Patricia testified next. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue as she spoke about how much she loved Emma, how worried she was about Mason's mental state, how the family just wanted to help. She described a loving anniversary party that Mason had disrupted with false accusations. My father Robert spoke about the fraud allegations. "These accusations are pure fiction. My son has become delusional. I never defrauded my mother." The fact that he'd make up something so serious shows how unwell he's become. They'd thought of everything, even brought a psychiatrist who hadn't met me but offered an opinion based on their descriptions of my behavior. Shows signs consistent with paranoid disorder, heightened by unresolved grief, fixates on perceived wrongs, builds elaborate documentation to support false narratives, isolates self and child from support systems. Then it was our turn. Kevin called me to the stand first. I explained everything. Laura's death, the inheritance from Grandma Dorothy, my family's resentment, the years of increasing cruelty toward Emma. I described the anniversary party in detail. Emma being pushed aside, given a trash bag instead of a gift, forced to pick up garbage while other children played. Kevin played the video, the courtroom filled with the sounds of that day. My mother's voice, sharp and dismissive. Wait your turn. Jessica sneering. Pick up the trash. The laughter of children. My quiet, controlled words. She's your blood. My mother's cruel response. If you don't like it, don't come next year. And before you leave, clean the whole area. The video was damning. Undeniable. I saw Judge Morrison's expression tighten as she watched. But Jessica's lawyer rose for cross-examination and turned it all around. Mr. Mason, you recorded this party. Did anyone know you were recording? No. So you secretly recorded your family at a private gathering? I recorded it because I suspected something like this would happen. So you went to a party expecting to document wrongdoing. You were looking for evidence to support your belief that your family mistreats your daughter. They do mistreat her. The video proves it. Or it shows a busy grandmother at a large party who briefly asked a child to wait, and a father who interpreted it through a paranoid lens. She paused. Mr. Mason, how many hours of secret recordings do you have of your family? I've documented incidents over 18 months. Hours of surveillance? Not surveillance. Documentation of abuse. You've been secretly recording your own family for over a year. You've cataloged, organized, and analyzed their every interaction with your daughter. Does that seem like normal behavior to you? I opened my mouth, closed it. She'd twisted it again. My evidence of abuse became evidence of my obsession. Kevin called Emma's school counselor, Susan. She testified about Emma being a well-adjusted child, about the close bond between Emma and me, about Emma's distress when Jessica tried to pick her up from school. But on cross-examination, Jessica's lawyer asked, has Emma ever expressed fear of her grandparents? Not fear. Exactly, Susan admitted. More. Reluctance. But she's never claimed they hurt her? No physical harm? No. And isn't it possible that a father's negative attitude toward his family could influence a child's feelings about them? It's possible. Yes. The morning dragged on. Testimony, cross-examination, documents submitted, and arguments made. During a recess, Kevin pulled me aside in the hallway. It's not looking good, he said quietly. What do you mean? You saw that video. You heard what they did. I know, Mason. But they've built a strong narrative. Grieving widower, unresolved trauma, paranoid tendencies, secret surveillance of family, baseless criminal complaints, job troubles. They're making you look unstable. I am stable. I am protecting my daughter. I know that. But we need the judge to see it too, and right now I'm not sure she does. When we returned, Judge Morrison announced her decision. I felt my heart hammering in my chest so hard I could barely hear her words. This is a complex case. I've reviewed all evidence and heard all testimony. The video from the anniversary party is concerning. However, it must be weighed against other factors. The father has engaged in extensive surveillance of his family, filed serious criminal allegations that have not yet resulted in charges, been placed on administrative leave from employment, and demonstrated what could be interpreted as obsessive documentation behaviors. She paused, looking at both sides. Temporary custody will remain with the father. However, I'm ordering supervised visitation for the grandparents, twice monthly, supervised by a court-appointed monitor. I'm also ordering mandatory therapy for Mr. Mason to address grief and family dynamics, psychological evaluation for Emma to assess any emotional harm, and monitoring by Child Protective Services for the next 6 months. She looked directly at me. Mr. Mason, if any concerns arise during this monitoring period, this court will not hesitate to revisit custody arrangements. You are being given an opportunity to demonstrate that you can provide a stable home environment for your daughter. Do not squander it. Court adjourned. I technically won. Emma stayed with me. But I was under a microscope. One wrong move from losing her. Outside the courtroom, Patricia smiled at me coldly. We'll be watching everything you do, Mason. Every little mistake. Jessica whispered as she passed. You can't win. We'll wait for you to slip up once. I took Emma to school, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I'd fought back, and I'd barely held on. They'd turned my protection of Emma into surveillance. my documentation into paranoia, my love into obsession. That night, Emma asked if we were going to be okay. I didn't know what to tell her. I sat in my study after she went to sleep, looking at Laura's photo. What would you do? I asked her picture. How would you fight this? Then my phone rang. Uncle Frank calling at midnight. Mason, I've been thinking about those documents I gave you. About your father's fraud. What about them? I went back through everything tonight. There's more than I thought. The fraud wasn't just against Dorothy. He ran a scheme that defrauded multiple investors. Used Dorothy's name as a reference to make it seem legitimate. How many investors? At least 5 that I found. Maybe more. And there's a woman, Carol Bennett. She lost her entire retirement savings. $200,000. She's been trying to get justice for almost 30 years. Can you get me her information? Already done. I'm emailing it to you now. Mason, this is bigger than one family dispute. Your father is a career con artist. And if you can prove it, if you can get these victims to come forward together, you might have something the authorities can't ignore. I stayed up all night reading through Frank's new findings, tracking down information about Carol Bennett, building a case that was bigger than my family's cruelty to Emma. By morning, I had a plan. It was time to stop playing defense and start playing offense. Carol Bennett lived in a modest apartment on the east side of town. I called her Saturday morning, explained who I was and why I was reaching out. There was a long silence after I finished. Robert's son, she finally said, her voice heavy with old pain. Why should I help you? Because he's trying to take my daughter from me, and I need to prove what kind of man he really is. And because maybe, after 30 years, you deserve justice. She agreed to meet me that afternoon. Carol was 73, retired teacher, with tired eyes that had seen too many disappointments. We sat in her small living room, and she told me her story. Your father came to my school in 1997. Said he had a real estate development opportunity, premium waterfront condos, guaranteed return. He seemed so professional, so trustworthy. He said his own mother had invested, that Dorothy could vouch for him. I'd just received my late husband's life insurance. $200,000. Everything I had. She showed me documents. Promotional materials for luxury condos that were never built. Canceled checks made out to Robert's development company. Letters promising returns that never came. When she tried to get her money back, the company had dissolved. Robert claimed bankruptcy, and her investment was gone. I filed reports with every agency I could find. But he'd covered his tracks well. The company was legitimate on paper. The bankruptcy was legal. I couldn't prove fraud, just bad business. She looked at me with those tired eyes. I had to work 10 more years than I planned. I'm living on Social Security now. I'll never get that money back. I showed her Uncle Frank's documentation. Evidence of a pattern. Robert had run the same scheme multiple times, using family references to establish credibility, taking money from vulnerable people, then disappearing behind corporate structures and bankruptcy filings. How many others? Carol asked. At least 4 more that we've found. Maybe more. We spent the rest of the day calling them. A retired firefighter who'd lost $90,000. A widow who'd invested her husband's pension. A young couple who'd put their savings into what they thought was a sure thing. All between 1995 and 2003. All using the same playbook. All left with nothing. By Sunday, we had 5 victims willing to testify. Combined losses, $740,000. Kevin contacted the FBI's white-collar crimes unit. An agent named Torres expressed interest, asked us to compile everything, and bring it to the field office on Monday. But I didn't have until Monday. Saturday afternoon was my first court-ordered supervised visitation. I had to hand Emma over to my parents for 3 hours, supervised by a court-appointed monitor at the public park. I watched from the required distance of 100 feet, far enough that I couldn't hear what was said, close enough to see everything. The monitor, a tired-looking woman with a clipboard, sat on a bench nearby. Patricia and Robert arrived with gifts. Toys, clothes, a new tablet for Emma, the same performance they'd put on at the party, but this time for an official audience. Patricia hugged Emma, who stood stiff in her grandmother's arms. Robert smiled broadly, patting Emma's head. Jessica arrived, coincidentally, with her 2 children. They spread out a picnic, played games, looked like a perfect extended family. Emma sat among them, small and miserable, but compliant. She knew she had to be. The monitor wrote notes. I could imagine what they said. Grandparents very affectionate. Family dynamics appear normal. Child seems quiet, but engaged. After 3 hours, I collected Emma. She ran to me and buried her face in my jacket. Patricia made a show of hugging her goodbye, then leaned in and whispered something. Emma went rigid. In the car, Emma wouldn't talk. I asked her 3 times what Grandma had said before she finally answered, her voice so small I almost couldn't hear. She said if I tell anyone how mean she really is, you'll get in trouble, and I'll have to live with Aunt Jessica forever. She said the monitor won't believe me because I'm just a little kid. They were coaching her to stay silent, threatening her with the one thing she feared most, being taken from me. That night, Carol called. Mason, I went through my storage unit. I found more documentation, copies of the prospectus Robert sent me. It lists other investors by first initial and last name. We might be able to find more victims. How many more? Maybe 10. 15. This wasn't a small operation. This was systematic fraud over almost a decade. Kevin called with better news. The FBI was moving forward. Agent Torres wanted to interview all the victims. If they could establish a pattern, federal charges were likely. But they were moving too slowly. The next custody review was in 2 weeks. Then I got careless. Or maybe I just stopped caring about hiding my investigation. Monday afternoon, I talked to Carol on speakerphone while making dinner. We discussed Robert's various business entities, tracking money through shell companies, building a timeline of his fraudulent activities. What I didn't remember was the tablet, the one Patricia had given Emma during the supervised visit. Emma was doing homework on it in the living room, while I cooked and talked to Carol in the kitchen. The tablet that had monitoring software installed. Tuesday morning, Kevin called. Mason, Jessica filed a new emergency motion. Claims you're harassing elderly fraud victims, using Emma in your vendetta against your parents, causing Emma psychological harm with your obsession. How do they know about Carol? I don't know, but they do. They have specifics about your conversations. She paused. Mason, is there any way they could be listening to you? I went cold. The tablet. I grabbed it, searched the settings, found the monitoring app hidden in system files. They'd heard everything. Every conversation with Carol, with Kevin, with Uncle Frank. Every strategy session, every piece of evidence gathering, every plan. They'd been one step ahead, because they'd been listening the whole time. The hearing is tomorrow morning, Kevin said. Emergency session. If we can't prove your case against Robert by then, Jessica's going to argue that you're using Emma as a weapon in a baseless vendetta. And Mason, she might win. I have one night to build an ironclad case, or I lose my daughter. I called everyone. Uncle Frank, Carol, the other victims, Agent Torres. Worked through the night compiling evidence, organizing testimonies, building a presentation that would leave no doubt about Robert's criminality. Kevin arrived at 6 a.m. We reviewed everything. Bank statements, victim testimonies, corporate records, property deeds. The paper trail was clear, damning, irrefutable. But would it be enough? We walked into court at 9 a.m. Wednesday. Jessica sat with her lawyer, confident and smug. My parents looked calm, collected. They thought they'd won. They thought I'd given up. They were about to learn they'd made a terrible mistake. The courtroom was more crowded this time. Kevin had arranged for several people to attend. Carol and 3 other victims sat in the gallery. Uncle Frank was there. Agent Torres from the FBI sat in the back row. Judge Morrison entered, and we all stood. When she sat, I could see confusion in her expression at the unfamiliar faces. Jessica's lawyer stood immediately. Your Honor, we're here because Mr. Mason has violated the spirit, if not the letter, of this court's previous orders. While supposedly focusing on providing a stable home for his daughter, he's been conducting an obsessive investigation into his elderly parents, harassing their former business associates, and involving Emma in his vendetta. Kevin rose. Your Honor, may I respond? You may, but make it brief. This is an emergency hearing, not a full trial. Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence that directly relates to this custody matter. Evidence that will demonstrate why Mr. Mason has been so concerned about his daughter's welfare in the custody of his parents. Judge Morrison sighed. Proceed, but I'm warning you, counselor. This better be relevant. Kevin handed the judge a thick folder. These are financial records spanning 30 years. They document a pattern of systematic fraud conducted by Robert Mason against multiple victims. The fraud began in the 1990s and continued into the early 2000s. Combined documented losses exceed $700,000. Jessica's lawyer jumped up. Objection. This is a custody hearing, not a criminal trial. The alleged financial activities of the grandparents, even if true, have no bearing on custody. They have every bearing, Kevin said calmly. Because the pattern of behavior that led Robert Mason to defraud vulnerable people is the same pattern that has manifested in emotional abuse toward his granddaughter. A man who can systematically lie to and steal from trusting people can certainly systematically manipulate and emotionally abuse a child. That's speculation and character assassination, Jessica's lawyer argued. It's evidence of character, Kevin countered. And it's directly relevant when the parties seeking custody have built their entire case on questioning Mr. Planks. Mason's character, while hiding their own history of deception. Judge Morrison held up her hand. I'll allow it, but keep it focused, counselor. Kevin called Uncle Frank first. Frank testified about discovering the fraud against Dorothy, about being pushed out of the family when he tried to expose it, about keeping documentation for 30 years hoping for justice. Then Carol took the stand. She was nervous, hands shaking, but her testimony was devastating. She described Robert's persuasive pitch, his use of Dorothy's name as a reference, her loss of $200,000 that represented her entire financial security. She described 30 years of poverty that could have been avoided if Robert hadn't stolen from her. Your Honor, I'm 73 years old, Carol said, her voice breaking. I had to work until I was 70 because of what Robert Mason did. I eat one meal a day sometimes because my social security doesn't stretch far enough. And when I tried to get justice, he hid behind bankruptcy laws and corporate structures. He's a predator who targets vulnerable people. Do you really think a man like that should have any access to a vulnerable child? Jessica's lawyer tried to discredit her. Miss Bennett, isn't it true that you have a financial motive for supporting Mr. Mason? If his parents are convicted, you might receive restitution. Carol looked at her steadily. Ma'am, I'm 73. If I get any money back before I die, it'll be a miracle. I'm here because that little girl deserves better than I got. She deserves someone to protect her. Kevin called the other 3 victims. Each told similar stories. Each described Robert's manipulation, his theft, his disappearance behind legal shields. Each had tried for years to get justice and been thwarted. Then Kevin presented the documents. Property records showing Robert owned 3 properties in different states, all purchased with cash at exactly the times when victim investments came through. Bank statements showing money flowing in from victims and immediately out to personal accounts. Corporate records showing a pattern of company formation, investment solicitation, and strategic bankruptcy. Your Honor, Robert Mason is a career criminal who has evaded justice for 30 years. He stole from his own mother. He stole from hardworking people. And now he and his daughter Jessica are trying to take custody of Emma, a vulnerable child, using the exact same manipulation tactics he used on his fraud victims. Creating false narratives, positioning himself as trustworthy while painting his target as the problem. Then Agent Torres stood. Your Honor, I'm Special Agent Maria Torres with the FBI. I'm here to inform the court that we are conducting an active investigation into Robert and Patricia Mason for multiple counts of wire fraud and money laundering. Based on the evidence we've reviewed, we expect to bring federal charges within the next 2 weeks. Robert went pale. Patricia grabbed his arm, her knuckles white. Jessica's lawyer stood. Your Honor, even if these allegations are true, my client Jessica had no knowledge of her parents' financial activities. She's an innocent party, seeking custody for the good of the child. Kevin smiled. Actually, that's not accurate. He presented text messages between Jessica and Patricia from 2 years ago, right after Dorothy's death. Messages showing Jessica knew about the fraud, knew Dorothy had discovered it, knew that's why Dorothy left everything to Mason. Messages where Jessica and Patricia strategized how to contest the will and reclaim what they saw as rightfully theirs. Judge Morrison read through the messages, her expression growing darker with each page. Your Honor, my client had no idea. Jessica's lawyer tried again, but Judge Morrison held up her hand. Counselor, these text messages directly contradict your statement. It appears Jessica was not only aware of her parents' financial crimes, but actively participated in concealing them and attempting to benefit from them. She turned to look at Jessica directly. Miss Jessica, you sat in my courtroom and testified about your concern for your brother's mental state. You claimed he was paranoid, making false accusations. But according to this evidence, everything he accused your parents of was true. You lied to this court under oath. Jessica went red, then white. Your Honor, those messages are taken out of context. Judge Morrison's voice went cold. I don't think they are. I think you came into my courtroom, presented yourself as a concerned family member, and committed perjury to gain custody of a child you've demonstrated nothing but contempt for. Kevin then played audio from the tablet. The monitoring software Patricia had installed worked both ways. It had recorded the supervised visitation. Patricia's whispered threat to Emma. If you tell anyone how mean I am, your dad gets in trouble and you'll have to live with Aunt Jessica forever. The courtroom went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Judge Morrison's face was stone. You installed surveillance software in a child's tablet. You used that surveillance to illegally monitor Mr. Mason's home. You recorded privileged conversations between him and his attorney. And you used the information gathered to manipulate these court proceedings. She looked at Patricia and Robert. You also used that same device to threaten and intimidate a minor child. Your Honor, Patricia started, but Judge Morrison cut her off. I don't want to hear it. She looked at Jessica. And you, Miss Jessica, filed this emergency motion knowing your parents were under federal investigation, knowing your brother's accusations were legitimate, knowing you had committed perjury in my courtroom. She paused. What exactly did you think would happen here today? Jessica stood suddenly, losing her careful composure. This is ridiculous, she shouted. The child needs stability. My brother is brainwashing her against us. Miss Jessica, sit down, Judge Morrison ordered. Jessica didn't sit. She kept going, her voice rising. You don't understand. He destroyed this family. We were fine until he started poisoning everyone against us. Her husband Brian tried to pull her back to her seat. Jessica shoved him away. Don't touch me, she turned to Mason, pointing. You did this. You turned everyone against us. You took what should have been ours. The bailiff moved toward her. Jessica backed away, still shouting. We should have gotten Grandma's money. It was supposed to be split between all of us. But no, she had to leave it all to you because you married that. She caught herself, but too late. Say it, Kevin said quietly. Finish that sentence. Jessica's face twisted with rage. Because he married that worthless woman from nowhere, who had nothing. She spun to face Emma, who was crying silently. Your mother was nothing, do you hear me? Nothing. And you're just like her. We should have let your mother's trash family take you. Emma burst into full sobs. Patricia reached for her, some instinct to comfort still alive. Emma pulled away violently. Don't touch me. Don't ever touch me. It was the first time Emma had openly rejected them. The mask had completely fallen. Judge Morrison banged her gavel hard. Bailiff, remove Miss Jessica from this courtroom immediately. As Jessica was escorted out, she screamed back at them. You'll pay for this. All of you. You're destroying this family. The courtroom doors closed behind her, muffling her continued shouts. Judge Morrison called a 15-minute recess. When we reconvened, her decision was swift and absolute. Judge Morrison looked at everyone in the courtroom before she spoke. I've been a family court judge for 23 years. I've seen custody disputes driven by genuine concern, by misunderstanding, by grief. What I've witnessed today is none of those things. What I've witnessed is systematic manipulation, fraud, perjury, illegal surveillance, intimidation of a minor, and contempt for this court's authority. She turned to Agent Torres. Agent, can you confirm the status of your investigation? Yes, Your Honor. Based on evidence we've reviewed and victim testimony we've taken, we will be filing federal charges against Robert and Patricia Mason within 48 hours. 5 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of money laundering, and conspiracy. Combined sentencing exposure is 20 to 30 years federal prison time. Robert stood abruptly. This is my son's doing. He fabricated everything. He turned these people against me. Agent Torres spoke calmly. Mr. Mason, we have forensic accounting evidence from 30-year-old bank records. We have 8 victim testimonies that corroborate each other despite these people never meeting. We have property records, corporate documents, and paper trails that cannot be fabricated. Your son didn't create this evidence. He simply found it. Patricia was crying now, real tears. Please, we're elderly. We'll die in prison. Judge Morrison's voice was hard. You showed no mercy to your victims. You showed no mercy to your granddaughter. Why should this court show mercy to you? She looked at Jessica's empty chair. As for Miss Jessica, I'm referring her testimony to the district attorney for perjury charges. I'm also noting that she demonstrated knowledge of her parents' criminal activities and may have acted as an accessory after the fact. Kevin leaned over and whispered, She's going down too. Judge Morrison continued, I'm issuing my ruling on custody. All petitions for custody or visitation by Jessica are denied permanently. All visitation rights for Robert and Patricia are revoked permanently. A permanent restraining order is issued. No contact with Emma Mason except through court. Supervised therapeutic reunification, if and only if recommended by Emma's therapist after appropriate treatment. She looked directly at Emma, her voice softening. Emma, I want you to know something. None of this was your fault. You are not responsible for the adults in your life behaving badly. You deserve to be loved, respected, and treated with kindness. Your father has been fighting very hard to protect you, and I believe he's done the right thing. Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. Judge Morrison looked at me. Mr. Mason, full custody remains with you. All court supervision is lifted. The concerns raised about your mental state and parenting ability were based on fraudulent testimony and manipulated evidence. Your administrative leave from work will be noted in court records as unjustified. I'll provide documentation to your employer confirming that the circumstances leading to your leave were based on false allegations. She banged her gavel. This case is closed. Bailiff, please escort Robert and Patricia Mason to the federal agents waiting in the hallway. I watched as federal agents approached my parents. The reading of rights, the handcuffs, my mother's sobs, my father's stunned silence. They were walked out of the courtroom, and I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not anger, just relief that Emma was finally safe. Kevin clapped me on the shoulder. You did it, Mason. You protected her. In the hallway, Carol approached us. She hugged Emma gently. You're a very brave girl. Your daddy loves you very much. Emma hugged her back. Thank you for helping us. The other victims shook my hand, thanked me for giving them a chance at justice. Agent Torres handed me her card. We'll need additional statements over the next few weeks. The prosecution will be comprehensive. Uncle Frank waited until the crowd cleared. Your grandmother would be so proud of you, Mason. She knew what your father was. That's why she trusted you with everything. It wasn't just about the money. It was about knowing you'd do the right thing when it mattered. 2 months later, life looked different. My boss Richard called me back to work with an apology and a promotion. The HR investigation cleared me completely, noting that the complaints had been filed with malicious intent. The neighborhood gossip died down as the truth came out. Several people who'd believed Jessica's Facebook post apologized awkwardly at the grocery store or across their front lawns. Emma started sleeping through the night again. Her nightmares stopped. Her teacher called to say she was more confident in class. Raising her hand, making friends, laughing again. We found a wonderful therapist who specialized in family trauma. Emma talked about her feelings, learned she wasn't responsible for adult problems, began to heal. One Saturday, we visited Laura's grave together. Emma brought flowers, the yellow roses her mother had loved. She knelt by the headstone, touching the carved letters of Laura's name. "Mom, we're okay now," Emma said softly. "Dad protected me, just like you would have." I knelt beside her, my hand on her shoulder. "She'd be so proud of you for being strong through all of this." Emma looked up at me. "Do you think she's watching?" "I think she's always watching. And I think she's smiling right now." Carol called one afternoon with news. The FBI had recovered $1.2 million in hidden assets. Properties, offshore accounts, hidden investments. Victims would receive restitution. It wouldn't cover everything they'd lost over 30 years, but it was something. "Mason, after 30 years, I'm getting some of my money back." Carol's voice broke with emotion. "I can't thank you enough. You gave me justice when I'd stopped believing justice existed. You gave Emma and me justice too. We helped each other." Uncle Frank became a regular presence in our lives. He came for Sunday dinners, took Emma to the park, became the grandfather figure she'd never really had. He and I rebuilt our relationship with Laura's parents, who apologized for initially believing Jessica's lies. "I'm so sorry we doubted you," Laura's mother said, hugging me tight. "We should have known better. Laura chose you for a reason." Laura's father spent the afternoon pushing Emma on the swings, playing catch with her, laughing with genuine joy. This is what grandparents should be, I thought. People who show up with love, not performance. The legal outcomes came one by one. Robert pleaded guilty to avoid trial, sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. Patricia pleaded guilty, sentenced to 12 years. Both were ordered to pay full restitution to all 8 victims. Their properties were seized and sold. Their comfortable retirement became a prison cell, and government-issued uniforms. Jessica was charged as an accessory after the fact. She pleaded guilty, received 3 years probation and 500 hours of community service. Brian divorced her 6 weeks after her sentencing, got custody of their 2 kids. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Jessica moved to another state, broke and alone. I felt no satisfaction in their suffering, only relief that Emma would never be hurt by them again. One Saturday afternoon, Emma and I went back to that same park, where the supervised visits had happened. But this time, it was just us, flying a kite that danced against the blue sky. Laura's parents joined us, bringing a picnic lunch. Laura's mother spread a blanket while her father helped Emma with the kite string. "This is what family is supposed to be," Laura's mother said, watching Emma laugh as the kite soared higher. "Not perfect, but loving. Not performance, but presence." I watched Emma run across the grass, joy in every movement, and felt something tight in my chest finally loosen. We were going to be okay. Better than okay. We were going to be happy. That night, at home, Emma drew a picture at the kitchen table. She showed it to me proudly. Our house, the 2 of us holding hands, and above us, a figure with angel wings. "That's Mom," Emma explained. "She's watching over us. Always," I agreed, pulling her into a hug. Emma pulled back to look at me seriously. "Dad, are we going to be happy now?" I smiled at her, this brave little girl who'd survived so much. "We already are, sweetheart. We already are." Later, after Emma was asleep, I sat in my study and thought about everything that had happened. I'd learned that protecting the people you love sometimes means walking away from the people you're supposed to love. Blood doesn't make family. Loyalty, kindness, and respect do. Emma would never doubt her worth again. She'd never accept cruelty disguised as family obligation. That was the real gift Grandma Dorothy had given us. Not the money, though that helped. The real gift was the freedom to choose who we allowed in our lives, the courage to say no to people who hurt us, even when they shared our DNA. I thought about all the people who'd stood by us. Kevin, who'd fought alongside us in court. Carol and the other victims, who'd trusted us with their painful stories. Uncle Frank, who'd kept evidence for 30 years waiting for the right moment. Mrs. Henderson, who'd been willing to speak truth. Laura's parents, who'd forgiven and come back. Emma's teacher and therapist, who'd advocated for her. They were our family now. The ones who showed up. The ones who cared. Emma asked me once, a few weeks after everything settled, if I regretted fighting back. I told her the truth. I regret only that I didn't fight sooner. I should have protected her from the first cruel word, the first dismissive gesture, the first time they made her feel less than. I'd wasted months hoping they'd change, hoping family meant something to them that it clearly didn't. But I'd learned, and Emma had learned. We'd both learned that family is something you build, not something you're born into. It's a choice you make every day. It's showing up with love instead of conditions. It's protecting the vulnerable instead of exploiting them. It's telling the truth even when lies would be easier. Some people asked me if I was angry at my parents, if I hated them. I didn't hate them. I pitied them. They'd had everything. A son who wanted their love. A granddaughter who could have adored them. A chance to be part of something good. And they'd thrown it all away for money and pride and spite. They'd die in prison, alone, with nothing but regrets. That wasn't victory for me. That was tragedy. But it was necessary tragedy. Because some people can't be fixed. Some people choose cruelty so consistently that the only option is to remove them from your life completely. That's not giving up. That's wisdom. That's self-preservation. That's protecting the people who matter. I looked at the photo of Laura on my desk. We did it, I whispered to her smile. We protected our girl. I knew she'd be proud. Proud of Emma for surviving with her kindness intact. Proud of me for finding the courage to fight back. Proud of us for building a life that honored her memory by being filled with real love instead of toxic obligation. Emma and I would face more challenges. Life doesn't stop throwing problems just because you solve some of them. But we'd face them together, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about us. We'd face them knowing we were worthy of love and respect. We'd face them knowing that choosing our own well-being over others' expectations wasn't selfish. It was survival. That night, I read Emma a bedtime story about a brave princess who learned she didn't need a kingdom to be valuable. She just needed to know her own worth. Emma fell asleep with a smile on her face, safe and loved, and finally at peace. I stood in her doorway, watching her sleep, and made a silent promise. No one would ever make her feel small again. No one would ever make her question her value. And if anyone tried, I'd be there, stronger and wiser and ready to fight. Because that's what real family does. We protect each other. We show up. We love without conditions. And we never, ever stop fighting for the people who matter. Emma and I were going to be just fine. So I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to walk away from family to protect yourself or someone you love? Have you ever had to choose between loyalty to toxic relatives and your own well-being? It's one of the hardest decisions anyone can make, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who's struggling with the same choice. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories and reminds them they're not alone in their struggles. And if you want to hear more stories about overcoming family betrayal, finding strength in difficult times, and building the life you deserve, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Finally, if you know someone who needs to hear this message, someone who's dealing with toxic family members, or questioning whether they have the right to set boundaries, please share this story with them. Sometimes we all need a reminder that choosing ourselves isn't selfish. It's necessary. Thank you so much for listening to Emma and my story. I hope it gave you something to think about, maybe even some courage if you needed it. Remember, family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up with love, respect, and kindness. It's about who protects you instead of hurting you, and you deserve nothing less. Take care of yourselves out there. Protect your peace. Love the people who love you back. And never apologize for walking away from people who make you feel worthless. Until next time, stay strong and remember, you already are enough.